I don't think we should be focusing on Loki. That guy's brain is a bag full of cats. You could smell crazy on him.
Have care how you speak. Loki is beyond reason, but he is of Asgard. And he is my brother.
He killed 80 people in 2 days.
He's adopted.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. It's that time of the week. We've got episode number 2 of Loki. I believe it's called The Variant. I was not exactly, taken back by the first episode, and I continue along that path. Aaron Sparrow, I want to love this series. I love Tom Hiddleston as Loki. I think Owen Wilson's fine, but I'm just watching this show, and when I get to the end of it, even if there's the big reveal, which I guess this week's was supposed to be big, I just felt underwhelmed again.
I absolutely agree. I know that this is going to upset people because people are so just slavishly devoted to the MCU, and it's given us some really fun films and some really great moments. But I have to judge these Disney Plus shows, as the standalone entities that they are. And so far, again, my review is pretty much the same as the first episode. Love Tom Hiddleston, love what he's doing. He's very entertaining to watch. He's got crazy charisma, but the show itself is not engaging me. And I don't know where it's going. And granted, I may change my opinion by the time we get to the end, but just on an episode by episode basis, so far I'm not impressed.
I've been left wanting in a large scale way. There were a couple things that they introduced here that I think were effective. There were a couple things they introduced that I think they kind of dropped the ball on. We'll get into that. Let's talk about the good stuff.
Okay.
And you mentioned it already.
I like the fact that by the second episode, we're addressing the elephant in the room of the fact that this whole idea of the sacred timeline means that there is no free will. It means that nothing that any of the characters in any of the films did matters because it was all preordained and all destined to be that way. I like that they have Loki questioning that. And it makes me hopeful that they're going to kind of undo that idea, that was something that was presented from the perspective of the TVA and the timekeepers and what they've been told, but that's not necessarily true. I hope that that's the case, because otherwise it means that we've just all wasted 10 years of our life and none of the character moments mattered because it was all
there was no meaningful sacrifice because it was always going to happen that way. That there's no sacrifice involved with that. Was just the destiny of the characters. So it certainly appears that way when Loki goes to the library so he can see the history. He wants to see the history of things that have happened and all this information about the beginning of time, the end of time, and the creation of the timekeepers is all classified. So they're hiding something. So it feels like they're introducing the idea about most of what Loki has been told is a lie or half-truths. And it definitely feels like there's something very shady about the timekeepers themselves. They do not want to let you know who they are.
I'm curious as to whether or not the timekeepers even exist. So, that may be a big red herring, that this idea that there's they came together and they, formed the timeline. It may just be that there's some other game at play. This is just a big bureaucracy. We could get some really fun stuff out of it. So, I haven't given up on the show just because so far I've found it a little bit dull and a little bit, meandering. I think that it could coalesce into something really cool. So still hopeful for that.
So another thing that they did kind of all right, we finally are getting to see them jump around time. We've got to see them go to, I believe it's in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. They go to a Renaissance festival. They also went to, was that Pompeii?
Yes.
And then they also go to the future. So at least we're doing some of the time travel stuff that we wanted. But I'll be honest, they're not really having a lot of fun with it. That's like what I thought this show was going to be built on, was Tom Hiddleston's Loki character kind of bouncing around time and being mischievous and having fun with it. But like the one part at the end where the eruption has happened and Loki's about to be overcome by like dust or debris or whatever was kind of striking, but that was like the highlight of it.
Yeah, and the other problem is because this doesn't feel like a show that they've spent a lot of money on. I know there's probably like some green screen stuff going on, but the sets themselves feel like they're from like a CW show or a Xena warrior princess. Like even when they go to Pompeii, it looks like a village from Xena or Hercules, the Legendary Journeys. When they go to the Renaissance Festival, it just all looks very cheap. And I don't know why you would not spend the money on this movie unless Loki they're kind of seeing him as a dead end character that they're not going to use in the MCU moving forward. And so they spent more money on WandaVision. But it seems like Loki is where they really should have put their money in. I was hopeful when he was talking about Ragnarok that they were actually going to go to Asgard. I hope maybe that's still in the cards. I'd love to see Asgard again. I would love to see, Loki's reaction to, this future that he's never seen. I think those moments can be really powerful. And I think that there is a germ of that. When he sees that Asgard was destroyed, it seems that there's emotion in his face. It seems Tom Hiddleston's like emoting, like realizing that his home is gone. But then later in the episode, when Mobius mentions it, he kind of just dismisses it, like, "Oh yeah, Asgard, boo-hoo," in kind of a way. So it felt like that was a put on for Mobius to kind of like show strength, but maybe it really does affect him. And in the comics, we've seen Loki will drop his agenda, he'll drop his schemes if Asgard is threatened. He fought against Surtur in the comic books, alongside Thor and the other Asgardians to protect the realm. So, it would be nice to see kind of that come out of this character in the show.
Yeah, for me, the highlight really is when Loki and Mobius are talking. It's interesting. There's some germs of ideas that are happening of things that they're going to build on. One of them is him going to Asgard, because Loki has come up with this idea that this variant of himself that they're hunting down is hiding in places that are about to be destroyed, because they can do whatever they want to that timeline and it won't cause a variant anomaly and a further timeline variation, because everyone there is going to die anyway. It doesn't matter what they change. Makes sense? It's a good hypothesis. And here's kind of one of the problems, though. Mobius says right there, he goes, "Yeah, and I don't want to go to another timeline and have you stab me in the back." And Loki's like, "Well, I would never stab anybody in the back." He's like, I've studied your entire history. I've seen you stab people in the back at least 50 times. Oh, I wouldn't do it now. So yeah. Mobius has clearly established that he does not and should not trust Loki, which we all know that to begin with. Yet he still takes him to Pompeii. It's like you're putting a spotlight on the big plot hole of why Mobius would even consider doing that. He could grab anybody that's part of the time variant authority and take him to Pompeii and try to change it or make an anomaly and test this theory. He didn't need Loki to do that.
I think they did explain that. I think the reason that he took him to Pompeii was because that was a safer area. That I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, when Loki says he wants to go to Asgard right before Ragnarok, Mobius said he's not going to take him there because he'll stab him in the back. But I think he establishes that I'm not going to put you back into to have you try to escape back into your timeline. So it's basically set up that like, no, I'm not going to take you there because it would be easy.
Why wouldn't he just stab him in the back in Pompeii and use his little time hopping capabilities?
I mean, do you want the Ryan George answer? Because the story needs to happen.
Exactly. Why even put the spotlight on the answer if you're just not going to listen to it? I always don't like it when they do that. Yeah,
it's interesting. It's like I think that Mobius seems to be a character who's kind of conflicted with Loki. He even has the line where he says, there's two possible answers. Either I feel sorry for you, and or I'm just using you. And it kind of seems that maybe it's a little bit of both. Loki's a means to an end, but I think that Mobius does actually kind of feel sorry for him. And I know that there's a line in here that I think will probably pay off at one point where we find out that Mobius likes jet skis. He's never been on one, but he thinks that they're super cool. And man, he would love to be on one. So I think that at the end we might get Mobius on a jet ski. Or if not, we're at least going to get a lot of fan art of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, there were a couple of ideas that they introduced that they didn't pay off immediately. I was happy about that. There's another idea that I think they might have answered, that Mobius isn't the only one working for this judge to fix time, that there's another agent out there that's doing cases and solving mysteries for her. Correct?
Yes. And then who could that be? Is it someone we know, or?
I take it that was the judge when she went and grabbed the stick or whatever when the fallout's happening in the end and she's jumping into action. I took that to mean that she was doing cases on the side.
I think that you may be right. If there is another agent, I mean, I don't like to speculate on these things because, everybody went nuts thinking that Mephisto was going to show up on WandaVision, and it turned out that the showrunner didn't even have any idea who Mephisto was because they've never read the comics. And, I know that... Hey,
they showed Mephisto in episode 1 here, but apparently it was a red herring.
Yeah, it was definitely a red herring. It's like make everybody think, oh, he's going to be here. But no, it's going to be, Loki's crown. Because when we do get the variant reveal in this one, the variant's wearing a crown. Actually, we're well into spoiler territory. So yeah, when Lady Loki shows up, was wearing the crown. So I don't want to speculate on who another agent could be, but it would be a good place we know that they're going to be using Kang in the movies going forward. This would be a good place to introduce Kang since it involves time. There's all kinds of things that you could do. Will they do it? I don't know. It doesn't seem like these shows are as high priority as we are kind of led to believe that they were going to be, as far as, they're setting up ideas for the MCU, but I don't know that there's any plans to have Tom Hiddleston go forward into the new phases. So I guess we'll have to wait and see.
You assume that was the reason for the show, was for them to be able to reintroduce him and bring Loki back since it was a major character. We'll know at the end, I guess. So
I hope
there are a couple things we'll.
I was saying, I hope they do reintroduce him, because I'm going to tell you right now, they have a dearth of characters that people are interested in moving into the new phases. I don't think Shang-Chi is going to connect. I don't see the Eternals doing well. I think the only Phase 4 movie that people really seem to be interested in is Doctor Strange, because they're already invested in that character.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Well, Guardians of the Galaxy, obviously. And then maybe people are excited for the idea of Fantastic Four, but we don't know anything about what shape that's going to take yet. So, it's hard to get excited about it. I know that the casting for Namor seems to be like their first miss as far as casting goes. The guy that they've chosen, I mean, he may be able to embody the role really well. I don't want to sell him short, at the beginning, but as far as looking like the character and having like a very striking appearance, I don't think they succeeded there. There was an actor up for the role. I can't remember his name. I think he's half Asian. But man, that guy looks like Namor. He's got Namor eyebrows. He looks like a dude that would make Sue Storm question her marriage, and the guy they actually end up choosing does not. So I don't know.
It's kind of like when you watch Aquaman the movie and the guy that he got to play Ocean Master, like bad casting. That dude is not.
Night Owl? You didn't like Night Owl as Ocean Master?
No, he's about as intimidating as a wet fart. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, that's not nice, but you're not scary at all. Jason Momoa would whoop your ass with one hand tied behind his back.
That's kind of the problem, is when you make when you get Jason Momoa, you've got to at least get somebody with his presence, and his physical. You
got to have somebody with some type of gravitas or presence. That guy, he's just kind of boring. Wasn't a good choice. But let's get back to Loki. And here's one of the fundamental failings I find in the TV show, or the streaming show that we're finding on Disney Plus. I believe this is supposed to be like an action comedy. I think we're supposed to be laughing through a lot of these episodes. I haven't had a laugh yet. Like, I believe, like when Loki's doing the thing with his lunch and his salad, and he's putting all that salt and pepper and drinks into it for his analogy that he was making. I think I was supposed to laugh at that, but it's not funny. There's not even a chuckle to be had here.
No, it wasn't. And I'll tell you another big problem they had. I think that when Loki's getting thrown around at the end by the big redneck guy, we're supposed to find that funny. And I don't. All I could think about, it took me out of it, because I was thinking, wait a minute. And there was a moment in Thor: The Dark World that did the same. You have Loki get thrown around by the Hulk, like literally get grabbed by the feet by the Hulk and smashed, side to side, just bam, 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 bam.
Like 50
and he
times,
survives that. Survives that. No broken bones. I mean, obviously it hurts, but no broken bones, no serious problems. Then in Thor: The Dark World, Jane slaps him and his head turns. Like she actually strikes him, and there's impact that snaps his head around. And, she's like a 90-pound woman. And then in this, some redneck guy who's, a fairly burly guy, but he's kicking Loki's ass. And I'm like, is Loki not an Asgardian? Like, he took all that punishment from the Hulk. He is supposed to be stronger and more resilient than a human being. Why is this human guy? I don't care that the other Loki has possessed this human guy. You have to establish that the strength of this other Asgardian passes along with it. And you've already established that a small human woman can jaw jack Loki. So I don't understand. They don't consider the power levels. When Jane hit Loki in Thor: The Dark World, he should not have moved. She should have broken her hand. He's not as strong as Thor, but he's still an Asgardian. Then, in this redneck guy, should not be able to throw him around. This woman from the TVA should not be able to throw him around unless you establish in some way that there's some superhuman strength with these characters.
Or they put some type of dampener that kind of holds his powers at bay, kind of thing.
That's true, but does it cancel out his Asgardian physiology? Like you have to at least give us a line about that. Like, what is this thing? There has to be some explanations to these things. Otherwise, we're left to assume and we're left to fill in the gaps, and that's where plot holes happen. Because if you're asking me to fill in the details of your story, then you haven't properly constructed it.
Yeah, I do think if we were laughing when we were supposed to be laughing within this episode, it would probably flow much better and be less boring. Let's get to the big reveal there at the end. We see this was so bad. This was so poorly executed, Aaron. So they're showing the different like forms that Loki has had in the past, like in a little hologram image, and it was kind of cool. There were a couple of Easter eggs in there and things that we've seen in the comic books, and we know that this evil version of Loki is going to be female. We kind of know that all the way leading up to it, and we get the first encounter between the two, and it wasn't cool. It wasn't a battle of wits or anything. It was just a little bit of information, little bit of reaction, little bit of it should have been dynamic. There should have been some type of spark there between this more evil version of Loki and this version of that we're supposed to be rooting for. And it was just so boring. I was like, oh God, just blow everyone up already.
For a character that loves to talk, they are not bringing the verbal repartee that I would expect between two Lokis meeting. The conversation, I mean, Tom Hiddleston's Loki is great. He's making his little snide comments and his little sarcastic things, but he's just playing off of a plank of wood. They didn't give the actress anything to play with. She's just supposed to be.
Well, it was four different characters in this. It was the original man that was by the flowers. It was the TVA agent. It was the heavier set man, and then it was the actual Loki, correct?
Yes.
I think it was 4 iterations, and they were all boring equally.
No, absolutely. I did notice one actor did try to get a little bit of the Loki mannerisms in, but if you're not going to have that consistent that one guy's trying, but if you're not going to have that consistent across all 4 actors that are being possessed by Loki, this variant Loki, then his effort was in vain. Like, he did like the smile, and I was like, okay, I kind of like, he kind of like mimicked Tom Hiddleston there. That was good. I liked it. But then nobody else did it, and I was like, this is kind of a problem. And it just feels like, I don't know. I don't know where they're getting. I don't know the resumes of the writers and the directors that are working on this. I know there's been some articles about certain things about how they're kind of just like picking people based on demographics because they want to be able to say that, we filled these quotas. Look at how, diverse our talent pool is. And I don't know if that's the case here, but it just seems like they're not bringing it. They're not like, they're bringing nothing exciting to the table as far as the way things are shot, the way things are presented. When Loki takes the hood off and it's a female Loki, that should be a shocking moment, not to you and I, because as comic fans, we know what's coming, but for the rest of the audience. And, my friend who was watching it with me, she basically said, like, am I supposed to care that it's a woman? Like, what is that supposed to be? Is that supposed to blow my mind? Because it doesn't. It just kind of, she said, no. For her, I said, did that
the build up, there was no tension in the room anymore because the building was so flaccid and flat. Like, and they missed their opportunity. This was supposed to be the most exciting part of the first 2 episodes, was this encounter when Loki is finally finding out who his foe is. How evil is this version of himself? And it turns out they're just completely boring.
And it's shot in a very like dark and dismal, location. It's supposed to be like a giant mega mart, like a Costco. And it's sort of like
Idiocracy's Costco, yes.
Yeah, that's what it looks like, because the aisles are so ridiculously wide. It's like, who shops here? Do you drive your semi-truck through the store and just grab things off the shelf? Like, I don't understand why this location is the way it is. And if I'm paying more attention to the details like that than I am to the 2 characters on screen having their confrontation, you have a problem.
Yeah, and so that kind of leads up to the very final event. There's they're the time bombs. They're the things that they let off to reset time. And they're all over the store, and the female Loki says, "This isn't about you." I guess that's the last big line. When the thing goes off and you just see them start dropping through the little time portals, but they're the wrong color, so they're doing something to disrupt time, and you're seeing all these anomalies show up at the Variant Time Authority, and that's when we see the judge grab that stick, like she's going into action. That's why I think she's she's the other agent. okay, you didn't show us anything. What happened to those places? Why are these things happening? I just know something happened. But at that point, you sucked out all the energy out of the room. You got to show something.
Yeah, there has to be some sort of like what are we building towards? You have to ramp up the tension, and that's the other problem is there's not any tension in here. I don't know what the stakes are, and I kind of don't care so far. You haven't invested me in anything.
I think the big stake is Loki trying to take over or destroy the Time Variant Authority, or is he working with them? Who's he playing here? But
it's not interesting enough to like my the investment that I have in the show is the same as the investment that I walked in with, in that I'm invested in
Tom Hiddleston
as Loki. Yeah. Otherwise, there's nothing here that has engaged me.
Yeah. That's kind of the place I'm in. I want to love this. I really do. I want the MCU to continue to be exciting. I want there to be things to look forward to, but this has not had the magic so far. It's been plotting. It's been pretty mundane and boring. I do not think the setting that they've created for the TVA has done this series very well at all. Like it's just very monotonous. So I'm going to give it 2.5 slices of pizza out of 5.
I mean, I get that the idea is that this is a bureaucracy. And so, your sets are very dull. They're very like 1970s office building, ugly. I understand that aesthetic, but you have to balance that by sending us to locations that are dazzling and beautiful and interesting. And so far, like I said, they look like CW show sets. So, like you're not really delivering. And maybe this is a victim of, I don't know how far along in this they were when the pandemic started. Maybe this is a victim of budget cuts. Maybe there's some things behind the scenes, but
maybe
yeah,
they rewrite stuff. Who knows?
Yeah, because I know they definitely did for Falcon and Winter Soldier, because that was about a virus initially, and then they were like, "Oh, that's too close to on the nose." Although I think they really should have stuck with it. I mean, you were already committed to it. I think that you stick to it, and you could actually have some social commentary that doesn't feel stupid the way that some of the social commentary in Falcon and Winter Soldier felt very ham-handed and not very well thought out. Especially there at the end, his Sam's speech at the end was just ridiculous and so out of character with everything that we established in the movies. I didn't feel that Sam was the same character in the show that he was in the films. So, I think that there's a lot of changes that were made on the fly. So I don't know if that happened here, but if so, it's definitely hurting the show overall. I think that maybe all the money gets spent towards the end, but man, I just want something that's pulling me in and that's making me care.
Yeah, obviously we'll be here next week to review episode number 3. We'll be halfway through at that point, but I'm shocked that we're 33% of the way through this series and nothing really. I don't know. I'm just not all that invested. Like I said, 2.5 slices of pizza out of 5. You said you wanted a new scoring criteria this week. I'm sticking with last week's score.
All right, I'm going to give it 2 propeller beanies out of 16.
Boom. There you go. That is not a very good score. That's a 1 out of 8. Is that like 16%?
Or is it? No propeller beanies might be better. You don't know. My system is...
I don't know.
But, for everybody who's going to just completely annihilate us in the comments because we didn't like it, so far we're not enjoying an MCU show, you're allowed to like it. And if you like it, I think that's great. And I wish I were you. I would rather be enjoying this and having a good time than just kind of the way that I feel about it, which is mostly indifferent. So, opinions vary.
I don't hate it. I'm not like, this is awful. It's just like something needs to happen.
It needs to be, for me, it needs to be more than okay. I'm like, this is okay. It's not, I don't feel like I'm wasting my time watching it. Like I said, Tom Hiddleston is just fantastic in the role and he's still bringing it, but there's just not much for him to work with. There's not much structure around him that is supporting his performance. So, that's
I'm telling you, I think we're supposed to be laughing almost the entire time. And without those laughs and those jokes paying off, everything just feels dull.
Yeah, it feels very flat.